Good evening, everyone. My name is Diane Douglas. I'm the Executive Director of City Club. We're so excited to welcome all of you here for a very special night for City Club and to celebrate the 55-year-plus career of one of Washington and our nation's leaders. We're also very grateful to C-SPAN for covering it and making this program available not only to citizens throughout Washington, but throughout the nation. So tonight, the International Center, the International Policy Center, the Gorton Center, was created about 2 years ago. And I think it's so meaningful that it was created by colleagues of Senator Gorton and friends and former staff members. I think that says a lot about his leadership over time, that they've stayed together. They've stayed together as friends and colleagues and maintained such a warm connection both to him and to his work. And we're very proud of that partnership and thank them for being here and making this program possible, especially to Cree Agnew, who was our partner in setting and coordinating the program tonight. The Gorton Center is dedicated to still learning about public policy, and it contains the papers of Senator Gorton from the 9/11 Commission, as well as presenting public programs and containing other memorabilia and information from his career in politics. I'd like to introduce the people who will be spearheading our conversation tonight with Senator Gorton. First, John Hughes. And John Hughes is the biographer who wrote this terrific book about Slade Gorton. John has a long history of service to our state as well, both as a journalist and as an author. He has written several books about governors and leaders of Washington State. Booth Who, a biography of Booth Gardner. This book, Slade Gorton, A Half-Century in Politics. Nancy Evans, First-Rate First Lady. And Lillian Walker, Washington State Civil Rights Leader. He has had over a 42-year career in journalism, winning many awards for investigative reporting, historical features, editorials, and columns. Right now, he's working on a biography of John Spellman, and he was just writing about an incident with Dixie Ray Lee, and told me he really was very happy about having the break from the intensity of that encounter to come and talk to us tonight. Next, I'd like to introduce Senator Slade Gorton, who probably needs no introduction, and to thank him for his longtime service to Washington State and to all of us. Senator Gorton has really characterized his service by integrity, by bipartisanship, by intense focus on public policy, and by his great intellect, something that we wish was pervasive in political leadership today. And I think he is missed. He is missed in terms of representing us, and I think he is really missed in Washington, D.C., and we're so grateful for his legacy. And finally, Joel Connelly, another distinguished journalist who has served our community through his work at the PI, the Seattle Post-Intelligencer, both in print and now online. And he has been a columnist for many years, and you can still enjoy his columnist. So with that, I'll turn the program over to John, and we'll get started.
Well, I first met Slade Gorton in 1966 when I was a 22-year-old rookie reporter for the Aberdeen Daily World covering the legislature. It so happened that the man who introduced us was my former High Y advisor at Aberdeen High School, Robert L. Charette, an amazing Democrat. When he introduced me to Slade, he said in a sort of sotto voce later that he was scary smart. And I thought for Bob to say that, who I always thought was scary smart, spoke volumes. I don't know where the time has gone, Senator, all these 46 years, but I keep interviewing men and women in their 80s and their 90s who are a real inspiration. Jim Ellis, Dan Evans. The other day I was trailing Dan up the steps of the Capitol, and he was taking him two at a time, and I think he has artificial knees as well. But the really fascinating thing about the job that I have now for the past 3.5 years is to take the experience I gleaned from covering a lot of amazing people, Scoop Jackson, Warren Magnuson, Slade Gorton, Dan Evans, and to get to write the long-form biographies. And there's so many stereotypical notions about Slade in particular. The notion that he's a doctrinaire right-wing Republican, humorless, unscrupulous, slippery Slade, hates Indians, hates environmentalists, thinks spotted owls taste like chicken, all the above. It really doesn't square with the person that I covered for all those years. Joel Connelly, who my friend and colleague for all these years, better than practically anyone, took the time to portray the shades of gray. Not enough sometimes for Slade, but nevertheless, in my view, in a really outstanding way. I'll give you a thumbnail here, and it's pretty amazing to me. I lived it, and I covered a lot of it, but when I had the time to start doing the research, getting to work at the State Library with amazing resources of microfilm from every newspaper in the state and access online to Newsbank and other search engines. Well, Slade Gorton, longer than even Henry M. Jackson or Warren Magnuson, 56 years in all, has been active in the political history of his state, his adopted state. He was elected to the legislature in 1958 as a 30-year-old, together with Joel Pritchard, an amazing politician in his own right. The most fascinating thing to me early on was to see the battle of wills between Slade Gorton and the redoubtable R.R. Bob Grieve, the Senate Majority Leader Democrat, over redistricting. Slade, Dan Evans, Joel et al., they knew that if they couldn't do something to prevent Grieve from winning once again, thwarting the League of Women Voters, that the Republican Party would be reduced to a minority party for the next decade. The redistricting wars, a lot of this comes full circle because two of my best sources were Dean Foster, who at the time was a young college student and the sorcerer's apprentice in the redistricting wars to Bob Grieve, and Professor Howard McCurdy, who was Slade's aide. And later we'll talk about what it was like to do redistricting in 1963 versus 2012. And then Slade, it seems like it's almost Gump-like that he has he's there when all these amazing things happen. A coup d'etat in 1963 that toppled the Speaker of the House, John O'Brien. He met John Goldmark, and became friends and his favorite debating partner, sparring partner with a very liberal Democrat who stood accused of just amazing libelous things in terms of communist politics. And that led to Slade's friendship with Bill Dwyer, an absolutely brilliant young attorney who defended Goldmark and his wife Sally against the charges that they were communist dupes, tools of the communist conspiracy, I think the phrase was. And by the way, Slade did that as a Republican at large risk to his reputation. Then his run for Attorney General in 1968, famous cross-country bike trip with a family in 1973, and then one of the first highest-ranking officials, elected officials in America, to call for Richard Nixon's resignation in the whole, what Slade referred to as the Nixon had burdened America with a moral climate of cynicism and suspicion. I had a front row seat too for the landmark decision by George Bolt on Indian fishing rights, because when the legislature wasn't in session, I covered the Quinault Indian Nation and the rise of a lot of young Indian activists, Billy Frank, Joe Delacruz. It's just encyclopedic what he's done. Forget about landmark elections, some of the closest and most decisive in American history. In my view, just a tour de force campaign to defeat Warren Magnuson by not, as the kids say today, dissing Maggie. It was the Gold Watch for Maggie campaign, that he'd been a great senator, and now how about Washington's next great senator? But I think when you bring it full circle, if he had done none of that, when you look at his achievement, singular achievement on the 9/11 Commission appointed by Trent Lott in his service to America, that alone would have been worth a major book. He strived for consensus rather than this view that we have so often painted of this partisan, rather working with centrist Democrats on the commission. He absolutely drove consensus and greased the skids, if you will, for fact-finding that I would assert makes America a lot safer today because of it. But enough of that. Senator, floor is yours.
For almost 10 years after I left the Senate in 2001, I would be asked by